Hi there, Simon Corrigan from Beacon School Support here. And in this webinar, we're going to look at how to get a successful program of successful supervisors up and running in your school. So it's supporting your supervisors, helping them be a proactive and positive force on your playtime, at lunchtime and in your dining rooms. You can get successful supervisors either through, you can purchase Successful Supervisors as an individual subscription, or you can get lifetime access to our website, or if you've got Behaviour 360, then it is included as part of your subscription. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to think about why traditional training approaches for lunchtime supervisors has stopped being as effective as we would like it to be. And then I'd like to explore why Successful Supervisors is different and the implications then for how we run it in our schools. I'm going to give you two different ways of running it. We've left the program so it's flexible, so you've got lots of different choices, but I'm going to talk about what good practice looks like. And then I'm going to show you the materials and how to implement them with your staff and your supervisors. So first off, I want to think about why supervisor training, the traditional approach of getting everyone in a room and then paying for someone like a speaker, someone like me to come in and talk to them, why that has stopped being as effective as it used to be, especially in a world where we're seeing more and more children with complex SEMH needs walking through our door. Well, the first issue with that kind of training model in the modern world is because the issues that our children are bringing through our gates are so complex, the person at the front of the room often then tries to do an information dump of all the strategies and ideas that they know about managing behavior and being positive on the playground. And the first thing that happens is the people in the room are just absolutely overwhelmed. There are so many strategies, there's so much information to absorb, they just simply cannot hold on to it. So what they do is they hold on to one or two sort of bite-sized facts or chunks that they can remember. And then the impact that you see for the next few days might be, you might see supervisors using some of the strategies that we discussed, but because there's just so much information transmitted during a traditional training session that you look over sort of a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then the effect of that traditional training approach starts to kind of eke away, sort of trail off. The second problem with the traditional training approach of getting everyone in a room and giving them information is there's a big difference between what's called semantic and procedural knowledge. Now, semantic knowledge is the kind of knowledge that you get when you're in school as a student. You go into a classroom and you sit at a desk, and perhaps the teacher is going through factual information, perhaps the names of different organs in the human body or dates related to, I don't know, the Industrial Revolution. Now, with semantic knowledge, which is factual knowledge or knowledge about a topic, you can kind of absorb that. You absorb the facts and you go away and you can use that method to transmit learning and information. The problem with behavior management is it's not a topic, it's a skill. It's a skill that you learn over time. And what it requires is more of a mentoring and coaching approach. So if you think about how you train someone to do a skill, let's imagine the example I always leap to is the example of teaching a child to read a bike. Ride a bike even. So imagine my 4 or 5-year-old comes up and wants to learn to ride a bike. What I don't do is sit them on my knee in front of a PowerPoint presentation that talks about the mechanics of balance and angular velocity and the physics of all that. And at the end of that 1 hour presentation, I don't then say to my child, right, you've got all the information you need to ride a bike. Off you go. Have at it. Because learning to ride a bike is a skill. And when you think about how we learn a skill or teach someone to ride a bike or teach someone, if you think about how you were taught to manage behavior in the class, someone invested some time in you, they gave you some ideas, but they didn't just leave it at that. It wasn't like a one and done. They came back and they gave you feedback and reminders and new ideas that built over time. You were given bits of information that follow kind of like a spiral curriculum, maybe an informal one, but you learned facts, you implemented, you adjusted, you had reminders. And those reminders are so important because it stops us being overwhelmed and it stops us forgetting really important information. And if we're just using one-off training sessions, you don't get those reminders over time. So we've got the overwhelm, we've got the forgetting. And I think I've delivered traditional lunchtime supervisor training back in the day. And while it had its impact, as kids become more complex and there's more information to manage and learn, It's just stopped being as effective, which is what led us to develop Successful Supervisors. So the Successful Supervisors approach is completely different. It's about giving your lunchtime supervisors in a 10-minute session one important strategy that's explained practically and simply and in a step-by-step way that they can go out and start using with your kids on your playground at lunchtime immediately, or giving them one important insight or piece of information, perhaps related to a child's SEND, maybe something about learning about why children with sensory needs might find it difficult in the hall at lunchtime, in the dining room, and what adaptations might be successful for them. So it's just one thing. It's a 10-minute video that we share them, and I'll talk about how we might deliver that, and there's a couple of good ways of doing that in a moment. But each video is about 10 minutes, short, sharp, focused on one thing, one practical thing, so our supervisors don't get overwhelmed. And then what we do is we leave probably about 3 weeks, right? And then we give them a new video, a new 10-minute bite-sized training session with another practical strategy. So it might be a strategy that builds on what we spoke about last time, or a bit of extra depth, or it might take the strategy in a different direction. And it also gives the supervisors a reminder of what we spoke about last time. So they're getting reminders, they're getting greater depth, they're getting new strategies that build, one after the other. Then they have 2 or 3 weeks where they practice using that strategy, and then they have another training session. So we've designed Successful Supervisors to be really flexible. We believe that you know your staff better than we do. You know your children, you know the way you organize your day better than we do. So we're not going to dictate to you how you use this program. But if I could dictate one thing, it would be this: avoid the temptation to say the supervisors say owe us a half a day worth of training because they've done some extra hours or something, or they haven't done enough hours. So what we're going to do is we're going to sit them through 10 Successful Supervisors videos, because in my experience, when I've seen schools use that program, I've really not seen the information stick or for them to get value from it. What happens is the supervisors watch the videos, they nod, but like a traditional training session, there's just way too much information they can't implement. So if I could dictate anything, I would say follow the pattern of training session, 2 or 3 weeks practice, training session, 2 or 3 weeks practice, and then you're kind of emulating the mentoring, the reminders, and the spiral curriculum that helped us become, teachers and school leaders. So what I'm going to do is, before I explain the 2 methods of approaching, I'm just going to show you what the materials look like and where to find them inside your Behavior 360 dashboard. I'm just going to share my screen. There we go. So this is what it looks like when you sign into your Behavior 360 dashboard. And if you scroll down, you will see near the bottom, we have got Successful Supervisors. So I'm going to click on that. We've got Successful Supervisors Level 1 and Level 2. Level 1 is roughly a year. Level 2 is roughly a year worth of training material, if you follow that kind of staggered bite-sized approach. But I'm not going to start with those videos. What I'm going to do is, because this video is aimed at school leaders, I'm going to go into the resources for leaders section. I'm also going to show you as well some bonus materials in a moment. So as the person running the program, the person managing the program, you want to start in the resources for leaders section. And there is a ton of stuff here to get you up and running. We've got quick start guides and checklists to help you make sure you've got everything that you need in place. We've got some extra training videos. We've got success trackers, and these are really useful. I'll explain what those are for in a moment. We've got sample timetables. We've got certificates for when lunchtime supervisors complete modules. We've got certificates for level 2, and we've got even things like lanyards. And if you want to advertise that you're a successful supervisor schools, to show parents and people like external partners and inspectors that you invest in SMH and behavior at lunchtime, then there's a simple way of adding a successful supervisors badge to your website. So there's loads of stuff in there that is well worth looking at. So what are the 2 ways of approaching successful supervisors? The first way is really to kind of kind of emulate the traditional approach, which is where you bring all your supervisors together for a 15-minute session. Now, how you organize this is going to be down to your school. Lots of schools we work with often have the supervisors in for a meeting, say once a week for 15-20 minutes before the shift begins. So it might be you devote one of those sessions to this per month or every 3 weeks, say, or it might be that you have to bring them in separately, away from their normal hours. But it's only a 15-minute session. You bring everyone together into the room. You share a video on the whiteboard, and I'll show you how to access the videos in a moment. But you almost like you would teach a lesson. So you bring all the supervisors into a room, and we put one video up at the board at the front, and we share the video together, and the video talks them through, that one strategy or one insight or one idea. So we learn together. And then what I would do if I were you to really get benefit from this approach is to then say I'd start a discussion, and I'd say to the supervisors, right, how does this apply to our children? When you think about our kids, what's true about this? How can we implement this so it works for us, and get them talking about it? Now, when you're taking this approach, what I would then say at the end of the session is, let's say you've done the first video is all about how to resolve an argument between two children. What I would do then is to say, right, our focus as a group for the next 2 or 3 weeks, whenever the next meeting's going to be, is to implement this in our school. So we've got this 4-step formula for resolving arguments. We are now going to hammer away at this and make it a real part of our practice. So when we have children who come to us with an argument, this is the formula that we're going to use. And what we're going to do is what I'm going to do. If you have a lead supervisor, their job then becomes that when you're out and about at lunchtime, and if you see someone, you see a supervisor, and then children come to them with an argument and they don't follow the approach, this is the difficult bit, right? We have to hold them to account, and we have to say to them, look, I saw what you did there. We are using this particular approach. Now, this is our focus for the next 2 or 3 weeks. So when you're next in that situation, I want to see you doing that. The thing with Successful Supervisors and all of the videos and resources and training Behavior 360 is without that accountability, what you've got is Netflix for supervisors. We don't want them to walk into the room, enjoy the video, watch it, and then continue with their practice as they did before. If we want to see real meaningful change that has impact in the long term, what we then need to do is hold people accountable. A great way of reminding them, by the way, and I'll show you where these are in a moment, is there are posters for the key concepts that you can hang or place on the wall where your supervisors come together to congregate before their shifts. So there are visual reminders as well. But that accountability piece is super important. So you tell them they're going to be held accountable, you hold them accountable for the 2 or 3 weeks, and then we bring them back together for the next session. And then we show the next video, and then we talk about how this applies to our kids, and that becomes our next focus. So our focus is kind of like a rolling focus that changes every 2 to 3 weeks, depending on how often you run the video. The other approach to running this is to take a more individualized approach. So the downside to bringing everyone together, there's 2 key downsides. The first is if someone's ill or they can't make the training session, they miss it, right? And then what happens is you've got a skills gap in your team, or you have to find a way of making up that or giving them access to the video, which isn't a problem. They can have the login and password. But you're then in a situation where you're trying to work around that. So that's a key problem, bringing your staff together and training them together as a group. And then the second problem is if you have new people start or people leave at the end of the year, then you've got people say you've got a group of supervisors who have done the first 6-7 months of the training, and then you've got new people coming in and they didn't get the first videos, and maybe they don't have the foundations. So those are the cons. There are lots of pros to bringing your team together. You can have that discussion and that focus, but one of the cons is managing what happens when people isn't there and when new people join and when people leave. So the other approach is taking an individualized approach to their training. So what you might do is, instead of having everyone brought together, you might have a rota that changes every day. So on a Monday, you might say Kathy does her Successful Supervisors in the last sort of 10 minutes, a quiet part of lunchtime. Often the ends of lunchtimes are quieter. So maybe sort of close to the last 10 minutes of lunchtime, Kathy ducks out and she has a session on Successful Supervisors by herself. And then on a Tuesday, it might be Bilal. On Wednesday, it might be Mike. So you have this rolling program across 2 or 3 weeks where someone different's getting trained individually each day. Now, you wouldn't sit with them while they do that. They would open up the materials and have a look for themselves. So the advantage of doing that is, let's imagine it's Bill's turn on a Tuesday. Bill's ill on Tuesday. You can't come in. What happens then is when it's Bill's turn next, he's just a video behind. But that doesn't really matter because everyone's following now their own program. If you have someone new start the team, they just join the program at the very beginning of the course. So what you've got there is people who are kind of like having a staggered experience. They're at different places in the progression through the program. That's got its advantages and disadvantages. I mean, one of the key advantages there is you're not paying for supervisors to do extra hours. You can do it within the lunch hour. But the disadvantage then is you're not getting that kind of camaraderie where you're bringing everything together. So everyone together. So you know your staff, you know what they need, you know the limitations of your school. The system is flexible. Sometimes schools have done this in a hybrid way. Sometimes they've done people training in small pairs and things like that. So you know about the confidence of your staff, you know what's practical with your lunchtime, how long your lunchtime is and what your resources are like. So when you're thinking about those approaches, think about what's right for your individual school. Again, if you're using an individualized program, you're going to need some form of accountability because we don't want the Netflix for supervisors scenario. We want the people being trained knowing that we're looking at them to be implementing certain strategies and targets. So that said, I'm going to sort of show you again a little bit more about the materials, what the videos look like, and then I'm going to show you, we include as a bonus a complete performance management program, which has got loads and loads of targets, which is also really useful for that accountability piece. So let me just share my screen again. There we go. Right. So I am going to come out. First of all, I'm going to show you what the videos themselves look like, and then I will show you sort of the CPD and the assessment materials and how you keep track of who is watching which video and where they are. So here is Successful Supervisors Level 1. I'm just going to jump into this video here. So all of the videos are just, this is Level 1. We've got positive behavior management. We've got how to speak so pupils listen. That's about being assertive without resorting to things like shouting. We've got managing challenging behavior. We've got working with students with special needs. We've got commonly asked questions. We've got an optional end of unit quiz where your supervisors can get a certificate. And in Level 2, you've also got building relationships through playground games. So I'm going to shoot back up here. I'm going to click. Every unit follows the same format. Every module follows the same format. Short 10-minute video. And at the end of that video, there's a simple 3-question quiz to make sure people were focused and paying attention. We've kept the language on that really simple.
Whenever you get the chance. A quick and easy way to help you make small changes that will dramatically improve the children's behaviour and your children are just learning how they can have 1 minute.
Go into the 4-step formula. It's super simple, very easy to follow. Everything's been scripted, so it's simple and it's step by step and it's practical. Then at the end of that video, here we go. We've got a quick 3-question quiz. So I'm just going to pop my name in there. Hi, my name's Simon. Why is it a good idea to follow the 4-step plan that you have been shown to deal with arguments quickly and efficiently, and so on? And then you go through and you can see how you did in the quiz. So you can see here there's loads and loads and loads of content and video, being proactive, working as a team, you know, how not to argue with children, how to close arguments down, how to look friendly, how to be, you know, how to engage with children. You can also see under each module here, we've got 2 separate posters to download. So if I click on that and I share that tab, you can see we've got a very simple poster that you can print out and place where your supervisors congregate. If you're going to have if you're going to focus on a particular topic for 2 or 3 weeks, this is ideal because it keeps it top of mind. Let me go back to sharing that tab. Right, so Level 2, let me go back into Successful Supervisors. Level 2 looks very, very similar. So you can see here, we've got the same modules. We've got more positive behavior management, the secret to exploiting proximity praise, why the best supervisors think like football teams. We've got supporting children with ADHD, ignoring secondary behavior where it's possible, dealing with meltdowns and what causes meltdowns. All simple, practical stuff that your supervisors can use. So those are the materials. They're very simple to access. What I'm going to do now is show you some of the bonus materials. I'm going to focus on the CPD framework because, again, we've got training, but accountability is, you need both of those things. You need to improve your staff's capacity to manage and understand behavior, but also we need that accountability piece to make sure they're implementing. And I'm going to click here, and if I share this tab, here we've got the CPD framework, and there's a loads here for you. There's a quick explanation, but what we've got is, if you're going to take the individualized approach, we've got development targets. So you sit down with your supervisor and set them individual targets. And I'm going to show you how to get those targets in a moment. It's going to save you tons and tons of time. So we're going to set a targets for a supervisor, but we're also going to say to them, what kind of evidence do we need to see to show that you've met this target? And then scrolling down, we've got a skills evaluation where they can do a self-evaluation about where they feel they are in certain key behavior management skills. And an interesting exercise actually is you get them to do it, and then you do it thinking about them as well. And then you can compare notes and see what they think they're good at and what they think they're not so good at. And you can compare notes whether you do that actually visibly with them or in your head. But what this will do is it will give you shared agreed areas for development. And then what you've then got for every single module is a A4 grid that tells you what material, what strategies, what information, what ideas are covered in every single video, and then concrete implementable performance management targets. So here's a simple one. Use 3 specific pieces of praise every day. Actively moving around so we can spot trouble early and see what the children are doing. These are all simple, visible things that we can go out on the playground and agree they're being done or not done. So that's, and then it goes on and on and on and on and on. It's got all the videos. As a manager, this is super useful because if you see someone having difficulty with something, you can then actually if you print this out, you can dive in and then you can say, we need you to go back and look at video 3 of positive behavior management in level 2, say. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing that. So that is my advice for getting successful supervisors up and launched in your school. First step is to decide whether you're going to take the group approach or you're going to take the individualized approach. That's down to you. That's down to your professional judgment. Then we've talked about how it's not just about using the training videos, it's about holding people to account as well. And then I implore you, please don't use all of these videos on a single training day. Do take the approach of, we're going to learn one thing, we're going to practice it and focus on it. Then we're going to learn something new about 3 weeks later. Then we're going to practice that. Then we're going to do something new. And what you will see is your supervisor's skills and confidence improve across the year. And in schools where we've seen this implemented well and they've followed this advice, what sometimes happens is actually sometimes you get the situation where I've got a lot of time for supervisors. They have the kids at the most difficult time of the day. As a school teacher, I would never say to my class, right, have an hour's free time, just enjoy yourself, right? Because there would be chaos in the classroom. But essentially, that's what we do for lunchtime supervisors. And often they're the least trained and most poorly paid people in the room. So sometimes what you often find is supervisors can be a little bit defensive and they feel like they might be being attacked because they're not doing the job right. But actually, what this will do is when you invest in bite-sized training across a year or 2 years, actually what you see is you see them grow taller and they feel like they're invested in and they feel professionalized. And actually what they want to do often, And this is one last key thing to bear in mind, is they want to go on to the next video because they want to learn more, because they see the strategies working, and they want to be armed with as many, of those skills as they can possibly get. But it is the wrong thing to do, because if you rush through it, even if you want to learn it, if you're rushing through it, you're not learning to implement it. You are not learning the skills and practicing them until they become automatic, because we need them to have this range of tools they can choose from. But actually, unless you've had that repetition, you can't automatically reach for the scripts or the ideas or the strategies. So that is one thing to bear in mind. So that is how to launch successful supervisors in your school. I hope you found that useful.